Right, greetings everybody who might be watching this video later on and joining in our discussion. I am Mandy Robinson Young, and I'm a psychologist and an eco-psychologist. My passion is taking people into wilderness places to observe wild animals with social behavior, to take people to swim with the dolphins and walk and talk with people who have much wisdom, the Maasai and the Bushmen. I think from them I've learned that good mental health and environmental sustainability go hand in hand, which works perfectly for me because I believe that we were born to really connect, and it's the times of disconnect that causes the most challenges in our lives. So there are two areas where we often disconnect. One is sometimes within our own families, our own communities, and that has a really significant impact on us. But we've also disconnected to a large extent from our earth that supports us. And the consequence of that is obviously being climate change, which I've seen majorly impact on the Kenyan people in certain areas as the droughts have got longer and longer and more intense. So I have Elizabeth and Colleen's on the call with me today. Internet's a little bit unstable all the way from Kenya, so they don't have their video on, so you can't see their faces, unfortunately. Maybe they'll pop on at some stage. But both Liz and Colleen's are from Kenya, so we're really looking forward to their participation tonight and what they have to offer. So the way it kind of works on weekly wilderness webinars is we don't always have the time or the money to go on a wilderness encounter. So we're going to go on an online safari, observe some wild animal behavior, and use that as a springboard for discussion. Because often what happens out there in the bush, which is often a place that's untainted by the imbalances we sometimes cause in our westernized civilizations. It's a place that's just balanced. It's been tried and tested over time. It's just very holding. And it's a place where what we're seeing often mirrors what's going on inside of us. So I love that wild animals often have a lot of wisdom to show us. And I hope that by watching our wonderful wildlife character tonight, the sloth, we'll learn some really amazing understandings for sometimes being in that position in our lives, or maybe it's part of who we are and how we operate in life, is being an avoider, or someone who doesn't like to always face conflict, doesn't like to do the hard stuff, doesn't like to say no. Somebody who often carries a lot of anxiety because they don't really address things. So I think there are times in all our lives when we behave like that, sometimes more than other times. But that's kind of a way of being in life that doesn't always serve us. It comes, a lot of research has shown that sometimes if you have this as a characteristic, it's because you've either grown up in a really amazing home where you're very well protected and haven't learned to face challenges and learn to deal with the more difficult things in life, or maybe you come from a home or a community or a life situation where there's been a lot of chaos and sometimes even abuse, where you just want to be not seen in case you just step out of line and you get hit or something like that, or you're the peacemaker in the family because you just can't bear all the conflict that goes on. So later on in life, that's just not something you want as part of your life, is dealing with conflict. So tonight I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to look at a video about the sloth. My invitation to Elizabeth and Colleen and anybody who listens into this video is, while you're watching the video, just take down a few notes. There's no right or wrong. Just take down a few notes, jot a few understandings, jot a few questions, anything that's going on in your head as you watch this video. After I've shared the video with you, we'll come back together again and have a bit of a discussion. So everybody okay with that? I see Colleen's and Liz have muted themselves. You okay with that, Liz? You okay with that, Colleen's?
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let's go ahead. Can you see the screen okay? Can you see the little picture of the sloth?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let me know if you can hear the sound, okay?
Slow. But that
All good? You can hear the sound? Perfect.
doesn't mean they're boring. In fact, sloths are one of the most extreme animals on the planet. And not just because they poop only once a week. First of all, sloths really are extremely slow. Their top speeds clock in at just 0.25 kilometers per hour, making them the slowest mammal on the planet. According to zoologist Becky Cliff, that's because, well, sloths can't really see.
60 million years ago, they lost the ability to see. They went almost completely blind. So in the daytime, a sloth actually can't see anything because it's too bright. If you can't see where you're going, you can't run around because you're going to fall out the tree.
Moving slowly may sound like a liability, especially if you're nearly blind. But being sluggish actually comes with all kinds of benefits. For one, they save an enormous amount of energy. In fact, sloths use about 90% less energy than the average mammal, which is vital, considering their diet is a low-energy snack consisting of leaves with a side of leaves. And as it turns out, being slow also helps sloths avoid detection. You see, sloths are so slow that predators like jaguars and eagles, which use movement to hunt, can't even find them. But some sloths take predator avoidance to the next level. Thanks to rare extra vertebrae in its neck, the three-fingered sloth can turn its head 270 degrees, which allows it to smell incoming predators from almost any direction. And that's especially useful when you spend nearly all of your time motionless in a tree. In fact, sloths sleep, mate, and even give birth, all while hanging upside down on a branch. And as you might expect, that requires some pretty extreme adaptations.
They've got special tendons in their hands which lock into place.
And along with their long, hook-like fingernails, allow them to hang easily.
They're like a giant coat hanger.
And to combat a rush of blood to the head, which might be familiar if you've ever hung upside down.
They have special sort of valves in their circulatory system that does actually stop the pooling of blood in the head.
But if you think that's extreme, consider this. Once a week, sloths risk their lives on a daring journey from the protective forest canopy to the ground. Their mission? To poop. And it really is risky.
We suspect about 60% of predator-based sloth deaths happen while they're pooping. They literally risk their life to come down to the ground.
So they have to make it count. And boy, they really do. Sloths can lose an astonishing 30% of their body weight each time they go. Plus, they might get a mate out of it.
How do you find a mate if you're solitary and you can't move very far? Well, they're going to have to use pheromones and scent markers. I think that coming down and leaving a little pile at the base of your favorite trees is sort of like a little signpost.
But if there's one thing that really pushes sloths over the top, it's their rough fur. Sloth's fur has its very own ecosystem. Because they live in the rainforest, it's often, wet, which creates the perfect environment for algae to grow and provides sloths with green camouflage. But it isn't just algae that calls a sloth's fur home. You can also find beetles, cockroaches, and a species of moth that's found nowhere else in the world, except for on a sloth. And the sloths don't seem to mind one bit. But that's not all. Their fur might actually save lives. Fungi in their fur have been shown to fight breast cancer cells, and they may also have properties for fighting malaria. So, despite their slow pace, sloths are far from boring. And in some environments, they aren't even slow. I mean, look at that daredevil go.
Right. Any thoughts or ideas that came out of what you've watched so far?
This is this. It's interesting that even you try to you create your own community wherever you are, sense stands out. So fear of one thing does not mean that it's a survival. It can also be a survival tactic. It may not be a negative thing, depending on how you look at it.
No, I agree. That's a great point, Liz, because I think when we are avoidant, there is something that is helpful about that. So if we think about the sloth, I think there was a plot where it says, you know, where was that? So I think avoidance can sometimes be helpful. Actually, you know, it can give you time to make good decisions. It can give you a great perspective. It can make sure you use your energy in the right way, that you don't bark up the wrong tree. You actually bark up the right tree. So I think there are ways in which avoidance is a helpful strength. And often when this kind of way of being develops even from our early childhood, it's usually to help us survive in that situation. But I think when that strength is extended into situations where we are avoiding conflict and constantly living in fear because things aren't done and we know that they needed to be done, or in relationships where there's differences of opinion and you just kind of avoid the argument, it can cause distrust. It can cause, you know, you shrinking instead of actually growing. So there were a couple of things I kind of went through the video a little bit by little bit. And the first one I kind of focused on was, what did you think about the sloth's ability not to be able to see? How does that kind of link into being avoidant, or does it? Does it or doesn't it link in?
Not being able to see that is something that I think is a trait. It may be something that you yourself cannot help. That's who you are.
Okay.
Elizabeth, maybe if I can jump in, it's a little bit tricky because in our daily lives we have like a challenge that is within the community. It's something that you really need to adapt to survive over. It's a situation which is so difficult. Like for example, you can imagine Sloth is not able to see, especially during the day. And you can imagine it. You'll able to see how resilient Sloth is. Still, there is some ways and tactics that makes the Sloth to survive all the obstacles of not able to see during the day. And they can still move, however much the speed is so slow, but there is that resilience that Sloth had to adapt for it to make both ends meet. And that's really applicable to our daily lives. We really need to make efforts a little bit so that we can make both ends meet, regardless of the stress that may come in our daily lives, in our workplaces. But we really need to pull up our socks, and we really need to do the right thing because that's what Sloth is doing. They can mate, yes, And you can see how sloth also is so responsible. At some point I saw if sloth wants to poo, it needs to come down all the way from the top of the tree to I think there's somewhere I happen to see something like that. But anyway, it's a good story that I really appreciate. It's eye-opening, and it really portrays how animal can behave the same way human does.
Yeah, I think I like that point that you're making, Celine, that Colleen, that again, we're kind of banding backwards and forwards about, is avoidance a strength or isn't it a strength? And I think for the sloth who can't see, you know, he adapts to going very slowly. He adapts to being very camouflaged, you know, and you're saying that within a community, especially with different demands that are on that community, different demands on a particular group of people, or even the different demands caused by climate change, one has to be able to, like the sloth, adapt to the challenges in its life. So the challenges for the sloth is it can't see. So I like that. But when what I was also thinking about in terms of it not seeing is sometimes when we're in that avoidant space, it's kind of like we're in a not seeing space. We don't really want to see what is going on and what we have to adapt to. And that compromises a lot of things. It compromises having clarity. You know, if we see, we can have clarity about what to do, what not to do. You know, it compromises seeing the impact something might have on not only ourselves, but on other people. So just kind of putting our head in the sand and not seeing what's going on around us is sometimes an avoidant way of being that's not very helpful. And sometimes when we're being in an avoidant state and we don't face things, we don't take the risk of making mistakes even, or of succeeding. So you can, once you've made a move, you can see, did that work or didn't it work? And it gives you some direction for what to do next. So when we're in that kind of unseeing place, you know, I don't think that that's very helpful.
It is very, very helpful. But again, if you try to analyze it, sometimes it's good to know why is it that sloth is not able to see during the day. You know, in our life, we really need to analyze the situations that we are in. What really makes me, what really deters me from moving from one place to another? Is it because I really need to come out of it confidently and face it as it is? Or is it the fear of losing my sight? It's something that I really, there is a lot of question mark in it. And sometimes question mark comes with a solution. And a solution now depends on how the sloth will be confident enough to step up and be able to survive even when light is too high.
I like
the other thing. Sorry, adding on to what he said, which is pretty good. Sometimes it is your nature. The sloth. It's not that the sloth, there's anything negative about the sloth. That's the way it is. So the time, if you consider that the sloth knows this is the time to go and empty my bowels and do other things, you know, it's kind of it's about taking control when it is necessary. Not necessarily jumping all over, but that is now the moment that I need to do this. So people may misunderstand that I'm not getting anything done, but actually, if I imitate the sloth, this is the time, there is a time for things, for everything. And this is now the time for me to act on this thing.
I like those both. Yeah, no, a lot of sense. I like both the points that you brought up, both of you brought up, because I think on what you're saying, Colleen, is that you need to ask questions and be aware as to why things are the way that they are. So that's the sort of, why is the sloth blind, and why is he adapting like he's adapting? And saying that in our own lives, we need to ask those questions, because then it gives us wisdom. So again, I think it's an active way of not being avoidant. But I also like what Liz is saying, is that sometimes you might appear that you're being avoidant, but actually, like the sloth coming down from its tree once a week to do its business, it's choosing a particular time that is the most important time to do something. So I think I like that as well. And I think it's great, you know, when a sloth comes down from the tree to do its business, it is at its most vulnerable. And it loses a whole lot of body weight, 30%. But it's also the time where it can leave a certain amount of evidence of where it is for a mate to find it. So again, I think we kind of going backwards and forwards about sometimes avoidance or slowing down can be a real strength, and sometimes it's to our disadvantage. I think there's a little bit of a difference between avoiding and just not addressing things, and making a conscious choice to slow down maybe, or to do things at a particular time.
Yeah.
Would you agree? Yeah. Because I think when we slow down, and it's a conscious choice to do things at a specific time, maybe not within other people's time schedule, but maybe for us it's our particular time where we know that that's the right thing to do. And I think it's way better to do that than to rush in and make a whole lot of mistakes or waste energy doing the wrong thing. But I think when you actually avoid life, avoid conflict, avoid specific challenges, I think sometimes it starts to build up. And I kind of thought about that a little bit in terms of the fungi in the fur of the sloth. You know, the fungi in the fur of the sloth, moths and all those kind of things, was healthy. It was a healthy adaptation. But I think for us, you know, having unfinished business and unresolved conflict, stuff that's under our skin that we're not dealing with, I think it can fester, and it can take up so much energy not doing something, so much energy just repressing something. And we lose belief in ourselves, we lose confidence, we lose our ability to move forward. We become really anxious because we know things have to be dealt with. So again, I think oscillating backwards and forwards between when is this not helpful and actually when is it quite helpful.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Thanks. So if one was finding this, you know, because I think these ways of being, the ways in which we adapt, whether we become a people pleaser, whether we become avoidant, whether we become a bit of a victim, whether we become a very controlling person, these often ways that often help us survive in certain ways. And then at other times, that strength becomes a weakness. So any thoughts about if that strength becomes a weakness? What are some of the best ways of maybe dealing with that?
Good question. Collins?
Yeah, it's
That's
such a it is such a tricky question. It's such a tricky question. Let me digest, because you see, if you really check on how the sloth is, and how Mandy, you have brought it in, and to me, I just see like in a society, we really need to accept people the way they are. Because one, we have different abilities. Sloth do not have ability to move fast. And that's why sloth, according to sloth he cannot move fast, and he has his own timing of doing things.
Sure.
And that's what has really become part of and parcel of sloth. Unless you convince sloth otherwise, that sloth can move fast. And what can really make sloth move fast? Those are the those are the some undisclosed keys that really needs some wisdom, so that you let sloth know. Maybe you can make your arm a little bit faster. But remember, if you check on how, can I call it a sloth toe or what? Anyway, or sloth legs, whichever, how they have been created, they're in such a way that will not allow them move so fast, because they are so long in a way that they really need to be very careful on the branch that they grab so that they can move. Because in life, like for example, my ability, maybe I am a slow learner, there is someone who is a quick learner, and there is someone maybe who is medium. It's not possible. It will really take me some time to be a quick learner. Why? I really need to go through vigorous training and counseling, and also adaptability, so that I catch up with whoever is a fast learner. So it will really take Sloth some time of understanding the situation, and now making Sloth to be an environment that will enable Sloth to be fast by again adjusting on his nails. Maybe nails can be trimmed a little bit, but I don't know how it can be done. So that sharp to grab maybe object or branches, so that it can be faster in a way. But as it is, sloth will still be so slow unless otherwise. I hope I'm making sense. Thank you.
No, you are. And I think what I really like about your communication and your way of being is that you're very questioning. So you're definitely not an avoidant person. You're very questioning, you're very seeking answers, you really like to be aware, but at the same time, you're very tolerant. You're very tolerant of other people's differences, and that different people or different animals have different ways of adapting to life. And I really like that. I think one of the core things of if you are in a situation where you find like the way you're adapting to life isn't really working for you, it's not being very productive, you're not being very happy, it's not really impacting well on other people. I think that a good place to start is with asking those questions and being self-aware. And asking those questions and being self-aware might need to have a coach or a mentor or somebody you feel like you can really be honest with and ask the real questions of, and really get to know yourself better. Often that's so much easier in relationship to another person who maybe is a little bit further ahead in an area of life where you're wanting to develop. So I think that is a really great place to start. The other thing that I have been involved with recently, which both of you might like to have a look at or consider, and anybody listening to this video might want to have a look at, is there is a book written by a man called Coach Hazard called Positive Intelligence. And it's based on a lot of research, in-depth on depth psychology, neuropsychology, cognitive behavioral psychology. And he says the way in which our brain develops, the neural pathways we develop, are sometimes very helpful for our survival when we're young. But as we've been looking at being avoidant or being a people pleaser, but when sometimes that strength can become a weakness later on. And he very much encourages, what I like about the similarities between these understandings and going into nature, is that in nature, a lot of the animals we're looking at, and I'm not encouraging people to behave exactly like a sloth or behave exactly not like a sloth. I just use the animals as a way of mirroring, of looking in at our own selves and using them as a way of getting some self-awareness for our own selves. But they have, I like to call it, they behave in their God-created species-specific ways, because in a much more true way. Whereas because they have just mini animals, some animals like the primates, the dolphins, the elephants, they have a neocortex, an ability to think less instinctively, but even beyond that, to kind of problem solve, to think out of the box kind of thing. And we have that ability, but we all have this survival brain. All of us, every living creature has this survival brain, and it's usually in that survival brain where we experience stress and we experience the cortisol levels in our bodies and brains increasing, and we develop neural pathways. And sometimes they're not as helpful as we would like them to be. And what I like about Coach Saad is he's created this operating system where he's gone back to the basics of what is very helpful in looking at where are these ways of behaving and thinking tripping us up, and then helping us to develop a different neural pathway that gets into the more essential and wiser part of our brains. And he has a different sort of techniques and videos and things that are on a mobile app. And I've done this sort of 7-week course, and I just found it really helpful in terms of moving sometimes from that survival brain to moving more to what he calls the sage brain, more wise brain, that's brain that is able to make really good decisions in the way we adapt to life, to people, to communities. So those are the two things I thought of if we were wanting to move from a way of being like being an avoider that's not working for us. But I'm really open to any other thoughts.
That's interesting. You mentioned, I actually like this a lot. You mentioned survival and climate change. And I was just thinking about what often happens when things around you change.
Sure.
And how do you then change if you stay on? Here we are also talking about climate change in the world, the real climate change. I wonder what happens to the sloth.
It's true.
Just a thought.
No, it's true, Liz. It's a really valuable question because, I think the advantage we have as people, I'm not sure what your spiritual beliefs are, but some of the beliefs are that, we were put in charge of taking care of nature. And if we take care of nature in the right kind of way, it'll also take care of us. But we have a huge, in my belief, we have a huge responsibility to do that. And some of the creatures that we're supposed to be taking care of, they don't have the same capability to work out solutions. So we have a big responsibility, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is true. But again, you brought up something on self-aware that really touched me because regardless of how we put a lot of effort again on climate action, let me just shift a little bit, and it really affecting our mental well-being tremendously. It's because many people are not self-aware. They don't know. You see, like there is a song in Kenya that I don't know whether it's a Kenya or an African song that says another person's food is another person's poison, right? With you, maybe handling how you handle plastics and your environment is very important, and you ensure that it is very clean, but you find your neighbor is not self-aware that how they handle those items is really critical and really affecting you mentally, because they really need to keep everything like plastics in place. their house tidy, and even how they carry themselves. Because even if you check on how people dress up, it's somehow you will see like we have a different personality. We have those who does it so well. We have those who struggle to do it. But now the biggest question, I'm still raising a question. How can we all be self-aware and do the right thing so that we don't interfere with one another? Because after, when we put on much efforts in this, a lot of us will be affected mentally. So it's really something that really needs a lot of thought and on how we can handle it. But I believe that if 2 or 3 people or persons do it, then we'll be able to influence the rest of the people to do the right thing. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, because I think when you're self-aware, you know how to fill your own cup. You know how to fill your own cup, whether it's a physical need, an emotional need, a spiritual need. And when you know who you are, because you're self-aware, what you like, what you don't like, you know how you do or don't impact on other people. But if everybody was doing that, you also know how you can be team together. So often with teamwork, I often suggest, and is that when each team member knows who they are, they know how to fit together as a team, and you move away from competition and blame. Everybody, it's like a shared leadership, and I think the Maasai people are amazing at that. I think they have an incredible structure of becoming self-aware and learning how to contribute as a team and how to benefit one another, and what I like about shared leadership is it's about everybody moving in the same direction, everybody participating in the decision making as to what you're going to be doing. And then whoever takes the lead is the one who has the most skill in that particular area. But if the project or the goal shifts, somebody else might take the lead because they have better skills in that particular area. So I think both wild animals and my experience of the Maasai people, they have so much to teach us about that particular aspect.
That's interesting, because you've come into you've looked beyond individual to community.
Sure.
And how a community brings all those variations together. And if the community works well, then the strengths can be harnessed to improve the survival of each individual within that community.
Sure.
And we live in a world where we often forget that we are part of something larger than ourselves.
Absolutely.
And we get to that point where we are trying too hard to be everything.
I agree.
So what you said about the Maasai is definitely an eye-opener.
Yeah, it really was for me, and I appreciate everything that I've learned from them. Have we come to the end of our discussion, do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think this has been brilliant.
Well,
it's very insightful. Like, I feel like we should continue more and more and more. But anyway, it's an eye opener, because I didn't expect this anyway. I've really learned a lot out of Sloth, and I'm trying not only Sloth, but I'm trying now to relate with some other animals that I know, and their behavior and their behavior. And again, now it really triggers my mind, because there was a movie that I was watching with my child, The Lion and the King, when the kingdom, the animals were all, there was that community, like Elizabeth spoke about going beyond individual, but
Exactly.
now doing things in a communal way. When the animals were united, they were very peaceful. Everybody was considerate. My ecosystem, the ecosystem, like the environment, well taken care of before I interfere with a bit of I need to be considerate because that will interfere with my member of a family. So if we work together, then we'll be able to understand one another within the community. We'll be able to understand our need, and we'll be able to come up with some strategies which will help people without hurting their feelings. Because this is what we really struggle with, even in our program. We are dealing with young people, but now you really need to understand the dynamic where these young people are coming from. Their family, they are coming from different family. And
Sure.
again, the family setup is so different. And
Sure.
the way they were brought up is very different. But remember, now you are bringing them as one family, coming up with the rules that is going to govern all of them and treating them the same way you treat one of them. So there is equality in everything that you are doing. And again, you really teach them on how they can be resilient, on how they can think outside the box, and on how they can seek help when they are in need. Because what is really affecting young people today is they feel like they don't have they feel like they don't have people who care. They shy away from sharing. They shy away from asking questions. And these are the things that we really need to help our children to be very confident enough so that they can ask a question willingly. And as the person who is dealing with these children, how friendly are you? How reachable are you? And are you also, are you solving the problems that they are having? Because if you come to me, you ask me a question I don't know, and next time you come to me again, I don't know. Next time you come to me, they'll give up automatically. They'll not have that confidence again to approach me for another question. So
Sure.
that's what I really feel I've learned today, and I'm looking forward to more discussions like this.
Okay, thank you so much, Colleen. So Liz had to just step out. So I know everyone has busy lives, and it was wonderful to share this time with you and Liz. And I think we learned from each other, and we're very thankful to the wild animals out there who teach us so much, and the people who are trying to be self-aware, trying to be community, trying to accommodate differences with inclusivity and respect. So thank you so much, and I look forward to your participation in future Weekly Wilderness webinars.
You're most welcome. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye, Colleen, and bye to Liz, who's just departed, and thanks, everybody, and have a great evening. Bye.
Bye.